Good evening. Music therapy, clinical depression, and suicide prevention and psychotherapy. What do these things have in common? Hi, we're Marshall Myers and Ben Barger, and let's talk about that. Don't sue us, Rhett and Link.
Hello, everybody. So, Marshall, what would you like to talk about tonight?
I would like to say I have previously had interviews with Jamie George and the George Center, and I have laid out, as well as my book about autism and music therapy, The Vigilante, in several interviews. But I really wanted to come clean and say all that I wanted to say about what the George Center has meant to me, because I don't think anyone quite comprehends the vastness of it.
Okay. Well, where would you like to start?
Well, it all started in about 2012 or 2013. I was in a situation where I was heavily involved in a community center, quote unquote, that was basically where I went for all my socialization, and for years I had felt, ever since I was like 12, I had felt like one of the family there and stuff like that. But things started to change there, and as I started to sell more and more books there, and that was frowned upon by both my parents and the administration there, I began to feel like everything was treading on eggshells and stuff like that. And about that time, I switched to a new medication, and I had started to take Depakote, which causes weight gain. And there were two very gentlemen who I basically had called grandfather, who really in all reality are very nice, but they thought that I was gaining weight because I was eating too much food, and it wasn't because of the drugs, because they didn't know about the drugs. And they would constantly berate me about how fat I was and all that stuff.
I'm sure they weren't really intending to insult, more of a family ha-ha nudge and
yeah, but I'm really very conscientious about that, and also
Sure.
I didn't know it was the drugs. It was really the drugs, and also the surgery that I had caused my stomach to become distended, and I got so conscientious about that. And also, Nikki, of course, we've known Nikki for years, my dog. The main teacher there, during one of his lectures, Nikki barked or nudged someone, and he thought it was funny, but when, for the next 7 years, for 3 times, from the head of the room, he would make reference to that, and everybody would laugh, and I felt like I was the laughing stock of the church, because it was my fault that had happened. Mm-hmm. And there were only 1 or 2 people that I could talk about, the youth director and the psychologist, that I could talk to about my true feelings. And his wife, even when I would expect her to be a little bit more conscientious of this due to the fact that her daughter is disabled, but she would constantly ask me to move out of the way when I was in the way, and Marshall, can you move? And she would never ask please or thank you. She would demand it like she were the queen, Mm-hmm. And that being said, I should have respected her authority, but it does help when you say please or thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, because of all these faux pas, and there not being really a social niche for 20-somethings in the church, I began to really, really feel like I didn't belong. And not only that, but I was having fights with my caregiver, who he's a great guy now, and now he's patched things up and we have a great relationship. But at the time, he found it kind of like a sociopathic game to get underneath people's skin and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he thought it was fun to see how far he could push people before they would crack, And as you know, I have a very low crack level and stuff like that. No pun intended, but that being said, I finally was able to let him know how I was feeling, and but then the only place that I felt that I truly belonged was at Camp Twin Lakes, which you just brought me back from.
Yeah.
And very often when I would come back, it would be so heavy getting back into the routine of things that I just want to go back to camp. And also, I was very this is the time where normally a lot of my friends are getting married and stuff, and it's just that stigma that you can't get married if you have a disability, you know? And basically this, at the time, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but at the time, this girl that I had basically called wife, and that I had basically called the person that I will protect chivalrously, got pregnant out of wedlock and got married. And I felt like...
At what time period
I
was this all happening?
In late 2013. Now, this was just about the time that I found out about the George Center. But I was devastated, and I felt semi-responsible because I was in a state kind of like codependency of that, and I felt responsible for her, and that if I had prayed longer and harder and stuff, that everything would be all right. And also, I had this kind of like this vision, like this movie I'd made in my head, like I would go to her wedding one day and I would have this sword and I would give it to the husband and be like, take care of her for me, you know, like passing on the baton. And she's like, oh no, we're just going down to the courthouse, we're not having a wedding. And it's like, that was the final straw, you know, like.
So to recap, all these things are kind of culminating, and at the time your one escape, so to speak, would be Camp Twin Lakes.
Yeah.
And now this happens.
Yeah. And that all being said, at times, I never actually attempted it, but death, I was like, Jesus, please come back or take me now. And I was never actually really, truly trying it, but suicide did seem like a viable answer. I mean, not as a viable answer as it would seem to someone like Robert E. Howard, of course, but when I was a kid, I was terrified of going to hell, so, you know. But I went to the Camp Twin Lakes in summer of 2013, and that was the first summer that She Who Will Not Be Named was not there. I decided to stay in for the music time one time, and it was like, Jamie had the most angelic voice, even better than my sister. Don't get me wrong, Macy, I love your voice, but even better than my sister. And like, she has the best voice I have ever heard. And Andrew Littlefield, I know you're up in New York now, but you just killed it on the sax. And they were saying, wouldn't he be great for our Any Dream Will Do performing arts class, because they would respond better to me. And they emailed me about that right when we got back from Disney World, and this was when we got back from our trip that we took you on for my mom's retirement.
Yes.
And they emailed me, and right then I had just learned about the pregnancy thing and the sort of all that, and it was really eating me up. And
so you met Jamie at Camp Twin Lakes?
And then we went to Disney, and then I found out about She Who Will Not Be Named, and then they asked me to... And I was so used to everything being on eggshells at school, quote unquote, that at first I was unsure of everything, but they have behavioral guidelines, but with people with autism and other Down syndrome being very socially challenged in a sense, they are very permissive of certain things, and I was just not afraid to be myself. And you know, for a while after we finally decided to go and think that we would be more useful at someplace else, that was my church. The George Center was my church. It's where I went for fellowship, for getting spiritually fed, and that's what I truly think. I told Tasia Carter to this, but music is the way that God created the world. The whole universe is a song, and I felt a part of that song when I was at the George Center. And later on, I started writing again, because when I'm depressed, I don't write, and like my dad tells me to write when I'm depressed, but it never works out, because my writing is more a reflection of how I enjoy my life rather than writing to make my life enjoyable. So, I could think of no better way to honor my friends for what they did than to write a story about them, and also to write a story featuring characters with autism to serve as the final chapter of my Lamathroth cycle. And if you, I can, all I wanted for months, and even when I was at the George Center, was just vengeance on all those people that had hurt me and had said hurtful things and made me feel bad about faux pas and all that stuff. And I just, if you think about it, Eggleshe, all he wants, even though it's unwarranted, and a lot of my anger was unwarranted, was vengeance upon Lamathroth, who didn't even do anything. His father committed suicide in and of it himself, but he blamed Lamathroth because he just couldn't come to blame himself. And that was me. And a very good mentor friend of mine said that authors' lives are shown in their writing either sympathetically or antithetically, or sometimes both. And this was shown to be me in an exaggerated way. The guy, his Eggleshe, his heart is consumed with hate, and all he's out for himself, and he just doesn't matter who he hurts. But then he meets a kind-hearted, magical, beautiful person who basically changes his heart, and that person is basically, now that Shannon's mother had given her up, was basically the mom of Shannon, Bella Jessica. And Jamie worked at Disney and was very good friends, quote unquote, with Belle from the show. Mm-hmm. So hence Bella Jessica, Belle, Jamie. I call Jamie BJ, And and also, I've told you this before, but I based the relationship of the Jamie and Shannon off of a very sweet motherly relationship that she had with one of the girls there. And Tasia and Colin and the rest of you, particularly Melissa, if you're watching this, it's Flashlight Go Boom. I can't say the real name, but I just really, in closing, I really want to say thank you. I would not be here on the face of this earth if it was not for you guys. And if ever I want to, Jamie, if I wanted to start a business and do something like that, I would do it just exactly the way you are doing it. I mean, there are things that you said, like you posted that one article about things that you wish you knew when you started your business, but you kill it. You absolutely kill it. You are, apart from my mother, Lucy Cusick, and and one or two other relatives I have, beyond any other woman that I've known in my life, you have been the most influential in sort of like a motherly aunt cousin figure to spur me on to become a man of sound mind and a man of pure conviction. And I thank you all. You are all my family. I love you. Thank you, and God bless, and I hope that this encourages you all. Thank you.